I think some of his final interviews, he starts blaming Israel for everything and talking about Israel lobby controlling everything. And what people don't realize is, I mean, he was the Shah of Iran, but the Saudis think that. If you'd watch Saudi television, I mean, that kind of narrative that Israel rules the world, that everything is secretly a plot by Israel and not just Israel, but a certain ethnic group and all of that. That's very, I mean, that viewpoint, right? Anti-Semitism, basically, right? That the world is just run by this evil conspiracy of a certain ethnic group. That simplistic, childish thinking is really common in the Middle East. It's really common in Eastern Europe, and there's nothing remotely revolutionary about it. The stupidest people in the world believe that garbage. Okay, the Shah of Iran, right? I mean, he's been overthrown in the revolution, and his last interviews before he's killed, he's saying, "Oh yeah, well, it's the Israelis, the Israel conspiracy." I mean, get over that, okay? August Bebel, who was a very famous socialist in Germany, he said, "Anti-Semitism is socialism for fools," and it is. It is. I mean, I swear there are some people who are just not smart enough to understand all the stuff that we're talking about on here, right? We're talking about economics, we're talking about class struggle, we're talking about, politics and all of that. And there are some people who just sit there, it's this other ethnic group, my ethnic group is being, and they can't think beyond, like, you know, it's tragedy. I mean, they're just so, like, they cannot bring themselves to think with any level of depth, right? And they just sit there and, yeah, it's the Jews, it's the Jews. It's like, come on, really? That's and ethnic hatred, primitive, barbaric ethnic hatred, tribal thinking, right? The people on the other side. I mean, I'm sorry, every place I've ever worked, every office, right? Well, not now, but when I worked at an insurance company, before that, when I worked at another insurance company, before that, when I worked in Cleveland, every like regular job I've ever had, there's always the people on the other floor, or the people in the other department, or the people in the other office. They're a bunch of assholes, and the bosses don't understand that we're the ones who do the real hard work, and those guys are a bunch of freeloaders. And there's the people in the other department, the people on the other floor, the people in the other building, the people in the... It's the stupidest thing. And the boss, always, when the boss is visiting you, he's on your side, right? Oh, I understand. I'm going to crack down on the people on the other floor, the people on the other department, the people in the other building, the people, and then he goes over and talks to them. Those people, it's stupid. It's this tribal thinking. It's this, my group, my ethnic group, my religious group, Italians are mistreated by Irish, and it's just, anti-Semitism is just an amped up version of that. No depth whatsoever. No depth whatsoever. And just primitive bigotry. Not helpful. Not helpful. Anti-Semitism is not helpful. It's not helpful. It's led to lots of hate crimes, the Holocaust, mass murder. It's a way to avoid talking about class struggle. Right? It's a way to avoid talking about class struggle, right? If the problem isn't capitalism, the problem is just this ethnic group, well, we just get rid of them, we just commit genocide and mass murder against them, everything will be fine. Well, no, everything's not going to be fine, right? And first of all, genocide and mass murder is horrendous, number one. And number two, the problem is capitalism. It's not some ethnic group, okay? It's not, I mean, bigotry, racism, tribal thinking is not good. I really hope that I'm not sounding repetitive. I feel like I'm stating the obvious, but this kind of crap is all over the internet. It's all over the internet. Does Israel play a negative role in the world? I think so. I think Israel plays a very negative role in the world. But Israel doesn't represent all Jews. It clearly doesn't. I think the Vatican plays a negative role in the world, but all Catholics I wouldn't put into that category. There's a lot of Catholics in Latin America that are socialists and revolutionaries. It's this simplistic thinking. Anti-Semitism is socialism for fools. I urge you to get past anti-Semitism. If you're anti-Semitic, try to be smarter than that. Try to think deeper, right? Try not to resort to primitive, barbaric, bigoted thinking. Try to actually understand economics and materialism. That's my advice. Hate me for saying it or love me for saying it. And I'm not trying to gain any points with anybody. I have gone to Iran to speak at anti-Israel conferences, so I am not carrying water for Israel here. I'm just telling you, no one is more critical of Israel than me, okay? But I've gone all the way to Iran. I've risked my life on a ship. I am somebody who is not loved by Israel and the Israel lobby, okay? I'm just telling you that if your analysis of the world is the Jews, you're very primitive in your thinking, and it's very dangerous. I mean, that kind of thinking leads to awful things. I mean, some of the most amazing communist revolutionaries I've ever met are Jewish. You know, that is the truth. There was a woman in Cleveland, an older woman in her 80s. She was Jewish. She taught me everything I knew about Marxism. She was very anti-Israel. And that the World Zionist Organization saw Marxism as its primary enemy. I bet you didn't know that. But the World Zionist Organization actually said that its main enemy was Marxism because, Marxism encouraged working class solidarity. It wasn't trying to preserve a Jewish national identity.